We have a wonderful speaker here again, Lena Thompson. We have another great session. So let's go ahead with that one. Lena, welcome. Thank you for your patience. I know we are kind of a couple minutes behind, but we appreciate you being here today. Lena is the, sorry, my throat. Lena is the speaker, future of work consultant and a mentor. She leads Lena Thompson International. She spent over 15 years working in enterprise technology as an IT consultant for global communications, including Microsoft, Bank of Kuwait, and Anglo-Irish Bank. Um, she has worked on a lot of different areas: behavioral science, emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, developing a framework that helps leaders stay emotionally regulated. She speaks and runs workshops and mentors tech leaders and teams on building resilience, managing stress, and sustaining high performance in fast moving, high pressure environments. Welcome, Lena. I'm going to hand it over to you for your session. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me today. Give me a sec. I'm just going to share my slides. Okay, you can see it all right? Yeah, awesome. So thank you so much again for having me and those joining us live or streaming. I'm glad to have you here. So before we actually kick off, I'm going to start with a few questions and just notice what comes up for you. And those who are live, please feel free to share your answer in the chat, because by doing so, you may help somebody else to see that they are not alone in this. So the first question is, do you ever feel like you're going through your days on autopilot, where you're like physically present, but mentally you checked out? Next one, do you ever feel like the sense of what is the point, or is this it to life? Do you feel constantly on edge, or maybe you're like waiting for the shoe to drop, bracing for the worst case scenario? Do you afraid, or do you rather say yes when you actually mean no, and terrified of disappointing others? Do you feel responsible for everything or everyone, or do you take things very personally? Do you feel disconnected from the things that you used to enjoy, or maybe the conversations, your friendships, that just don't feel the same like they used to? And are you afraid to make mistakes? Do you feel like you have to be in control? Maybe you refer to yourself like a perfectionist or a control freak. So if any of these resonated, if mentally you went, yep, I can resonate with it, the good thing is there's nothing wrong with you. But what it actually means is that your mind and your body has been under considerable pressure for quite some time. And it's the internal pressure, it's the pressure to keep up, pressure to perform, pressure to be liked, pressure not to make mistakes, pressure to be available, to meet expectations. And when this internal pressure builds without enough recovery, it can potentially lead to burnout. Because we are often told that burnout is something physical. It comes from the workload, or because we're constantly busy, or the environment, right? The toxic environment we talk about. And yeah, these things can contribute. But burnout goes much deeper than that. It actually happens as a result of this emotional, mental, and a psychological pressure that builds inside of us. So by the time we see it externally as exhaustion, as frustration, as a loss of motivation, fatigue that no sleep, no holiday can fix, it's been building inside of us for a while. And that's why common advice like take a holiday, go for a walk, go hug a tree, spend time in nature, it doesn't work, not for a long term. It can support us, but the reason it doesn't work is because it only addresses that symptoms, but it doesn't touch the root cause. So what we're actually going to be looking at today, and this is going to be a practical session also, so have a pen and paper just in case, you get some inspired ideas. What we're going to have a look at, firstly, understanding those internal patterns that are driving burnouts and how we can recognize and interrupt them before they escalate into the full-on burnouts. And also, I'm going to share with you very simple tools to help you to restore energy, focus, and gain clarity, especially when you're under pressure or when you're going through a really challenging time. So before we get started, I just want to share my personal journey, just a couple of minutes, who I am and how I even ended up. So back in 2018, I was an IT consultant, and to the outside world, on a piece of paper, I looked very successful. I had a six-figure job. I was working for global clients. I was traveling. My kids went private schools. I had an amazing holiday. And I looked pretty stable, and I was financially stable at least, but inside was a very, very different experience. For years, I've really struggled with self-doubt and imposter syndrome, and I was so sensitive to any criticism and chronically afraid to disappoint others. And it wasn't just at work, it just followed me everywhere, especially into my relationships. And by the time 2018 came, I began to increasingly also feel disconnected from my work. And I remember just wondering, like, is this all to my life? Like, I knew there was something more, but I didn't have the words to describe it. I didn't really know what that more is. And eventually, I got to the point where the fear of staying the same became bigger than that fear of the unknown. And I made a leap. I quit my job. Well, my contract ended. I didn't extend it. My 10-year marriage fell apart, and I moved to a new place with the kids. And I just thought, okay, well, I'm going to invest in coaches, best mentors, best coaches, and I'm going to figure it out. And I'm going to have clarity on who I am, what I'm meant to do with my life, like what is my next step. But what followed wasn't clarity. It was one burnout up to next. And eventually it completely it led to a total mental and emotional breakdown where all of the doubts, insecurities, fears that I have been suppressing my entire life, they came up to the surface. They blew up in my face. And sometimes the noise in my head, the anxiety got so severe that I could not even properly function. Like I didn't have energy for the small tasks. But the only really thing that kept me going through that was that inner knowing, and all of us have that inner knowing, that somehow this breakdown is going to lead me to exactly where I needed to end up. And with support of my mentors and coaches and very small group of friends that I had, I actually started applying the tools that I've been learning for many years to my life. And slowly, step by step, I've started rebuilding myself from inside out. And in the meantime, I started receiving all these invitations to speak and to travel. Like I went to Zimbabwe, where I was doing a workshop with the cabinet ministers for the Zimbabwean Leadership Summit. I went to Canada for the World Diversity, where I shared stages with Nelson Mandela's daughter and President of Mexico. I went all over Europe, tech events, job events, HR events, you name it. And what I actually started to realize is that the reason, well, I firstly had so many burnouts and why other people around me were also experiencing something similar, maybe not as severe. It wasn't because of how much they were working, because when all of that happened to me, I barely even worked. It was all had to do with how we were operating internally. In other words, who we were being while we were doing those things. And if that's not clear, it's going to become clear as we're going through this. So that really led me to create a framework, which I'm going to be sharing with you today, which not only applies to burnouts, but you can take it and plug it into any challenge in your life, to any problem that you're experiencing, because it helps you to cultivate that inner resilience. It builds that strong internal foundation so that you're no longer operating in a way that depletes you. So the first is vision. That gives you meaning, it gives you direction, your why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Your nervous system, and that's your capacity to handle pressure. Like we often see in one environments where people will burn out, some people will be okay, and others will thrive. But it's the same environment, same responsibilities. It's the nervous system that determines. how we actually going to handle this. And then it's our identity. And that's how we see ourselves, this internal stories that we keep on replaying, what we believe ourselves to be capable of. So when we align these three together, we create a system for a long-lasting success, because together they move us from survival, from reactivity, to a more grounded, sustainable way of living, of leading, of working, and being. So let's have a look at each of them in a bit more detail. So the vision is like your internal compass. It's like a North Star. It gives you your why. Why are you doing? Where are you going? You know, it's all about being clear. What is it that you want? And so many people I speak with and I work with, that they have good clarity. They know what they don't want, but very few know exactly what they truly want. And when you don't know what you want, and I don't mean just like, oh, I want a better job. No, like really go into the details. When you don't have that clarity, your mind will fill that gap with the past mistakes, with the worst case scenarios, with ruminations, with overthinking. And that takes a lot of mental resources. That's why you become drained. But when you have a clarity, when you know where you're going, why you're doing what you're doing, instead of being pulled into worrying, rumination, overwhelm, your attention become focused. It's like a difference between being a bulb that shines the light everywhere, gives the energy, or you become a laser, which is laser focused. And research in psychology and neuroscience has actually shown that when you have clear goals, your brain spends a lot less energy dealing with uncertainty and problem scanning. And that means there's a lot less mental and emotional drain, which are the two key contributors to burnout. So let's do this. This is like an honesty exercise, and you can just do it mentally in your head if you want to do a piece of paper. And type in or write in one if you've got a completely clear vision for your life. And I don't mean just career, but your relationship, your purpose, your health, your finances, your friendships. You've thought about it, you've journaled about it, you like literally you're living and breathing that vision. So even if anything happens, even if you get derailed, there's a challenge comes up, you can recalibrate yourself and you can get back on track. So that's one. Now type or pencil in, write down number two. If you've thought about it, but you're not completely clear, maybe you've thought about it, let's say in your career, but in other areas you're kind of blurry. Maybe you're still attracting the same kind of relationships or dynamics into your life. And you're like, why does this, the same thing keeps happening to me? So that means you're not quite clear. And then number three is if you're like, well, I know what I don't want and I want something better, but I haven't really defined what this better is. And this exercise isn't about being right and wrong, it's about being honest. Because if you're not honest with yourself, there's nothing you can change in your life. Now, once you kind of scored yourself, the next thing is if you scored 2 or 3, and even if you scored 1, still get very honest with yourself. Ask yourself, when did you set that vision? Maybe you did it 10 years ago, but is it still in alignment with who you are today? But especially if you scored 2 or 3, what I want you to do is to journal on the question, if anything was possible and I could not fail, what would I love? It's such a beautiful question because you literally give yourself permission to dream, to tap into your imagination, because we can't really create anything new from our logic. It's just not possible. Our logic is based on the past experiences, past memories. It doesn't care about the present moment. It's got no clue about the future. And yet we are so obsessed with it. So go deeper than your logical mind. Tap into that imagination. And then I would even suggest do 4 or 5 pieces of paper for every aspect of your life. And then take your career, look what you wrote down and where you are right now, and notice if there is a gap. And most probably there will be, at least in one of them, there will be a gap, right? And this gap, guys, it doesn't go unnoticed. Your brain is not going to ignore it. It's going to fill through overthinking, overanalyzing, overprocessing. So what you want to start doing is taking steps to bridge the gap. So that was number one, getting clarity on your vision and bridging the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Because when you don't bridge the gap, that's the potential for burnouts. The next one is the nervous system. So while having a clear vision stops your mind from scattering, having a regulated nervous system stops your body from staying into stress. If anybody's done biology at school, if you still remember what nervous system is, it's basically made up of your brain, your spinal cords, and nerves, and it carries the messages between your brain and rest of the body. And you operate in two states: sympathetic, which is fight and flight, where most of us hang out for most of the day, and there's a parasympathetic, rest or digest. That's when we're more chilled. You know, when you come home, you have a glass of wine, or maybe like go walk with the dog, you get more into the parasympathetic. Now, neither is good or bad. They both are essential. Goal is not to live in one or the other. It's to have the flexibility between the two. Now, I promise you, this is not going to be a biology lesson. I hated biology at school, and I'm not going to do that. But it's just important to understand what's going in you internally when you are reacting, when you're feeling drained, when you're feeling angry, when you feel frustrated. Instead of pointing the finger and blaming somebody else or something else outside of you, let's first figure out what is actually happening inside of you. Right? So burnout doesn't happen from a single event. It builds gradually through series of events. And that's how it works. The external trigger comes. An external trigger could be, let's say you're stuck in traffic and you're late for a meeting. Your heart is beating. Maybe your hands getting sweaty. You feel tension in your body. You feel that frustration or impatience. Or perhaps, let's say you contributed to your idea in a meeting and it just doesn't land. Or like nobody responded to you. And you feel that anger boiling inside your body and you feel contracted. These are the kind of external triggers, and we expose to them every single day. So the external trigger comes, our body goes into fight and flight, it contracts, maybe we just like, show our rage, or we go hide, or whatever reaction we have, and that builds that internal pressure. So next time the trigger happens, we have a little less capacity to handle it. And then it happens over and over and over. And by the time we get home, we're like ready to throttle anybody who looks at us a little bit funny. Right? And over time, when we get stuck in that loop, burnout becomes inevitable. Now, the other nervous system state is a parasympathetic. That's our recovery system. That's when we become more relaxed. The heart rate slows down. We can breathe properly. We don't feel as stressed. In that state, that's when we are more creative. We've got access to higher quality thoughts, to better decisions, to insight. This is when we get those aha moments, right? So those moments are not just like important for our body, how we feel, but they actually help us to cope even better under stress, help us to handle more pressure. So what you want to learn how to do is how to regulate ourselves. So when a trigger comes, we don't spend too much time on it. We can regulate ourselves, get out of that fight and flight into rest and digest. And how do we do that? Very simple. We all have access to breath, and we often forget to breathe. And when we actually start consciously breathing, taking deep inhales and exhales, our body starts to relax. You can feel that you're holding less tension. You don't want to like fly off the handle and give somebody a piece of your mind. You can actually start thinking clearer. So the next time when you've got a challenge, when you want to react, when you want to say something or to do something very reactive, pause, take a deep breath, and you can even do that now on a count of 4, and then you hold it for 4, and you exhale a little bit longer, maybe on a count of 6. And just do that 3 to 5 times, and then check with yourself, do I still want to, give them peace of my mind? Do I still want to react? And if you do, then do that again. And maybe after the second time, you go, you know what, actually, I'm just going to let that go. It's on them. It's got nothing to do with me. And that's how you start climbing your power back. And this doesn't just make you calmer. It literally resets you. It starts regulating yourself. It starts building your internal capacity to handle more pressure without accumulating it into burnouts. So next time, guys, don't forget to breathe. And the last one is identity. Identity, it's all about how you see yourself. It's your self-concept, what you believe to be true for you. And this shows up in how you behave, how you make decisions, how you interact with others, especially during challenges, during those high pressure moments. And sometimes our identity can support us. And in fact, our identity got us this far in our lives. But eventually it starts working against us. And that's what I mean. You see, we all associate with one of this kind of core identity or the role. Maybe you're the helper, somebody who always says yes and really, really struggles to say no. You thrive on helping others. But look at the emotional cost of this, neglecting your own needs, feeling drained, feeling unappreciated. Maybe you're a perfectionist. Somebody's like, I'm perfectionist. Everything's going to be perfect. And you end up controlling everything. And that leads to overwhelm, to, procrastination. So you never actually finish things. You don't even start things that you want to do. Maybe you're the strong and capable one. That's the one I've been identifying my whole life. Like nobody can see my weak points. I'll never show vulnerability, any weakness, nothing. And it feels like you've got to carry the world, like the weight of the world on your shoulders. Or maybe it's the achiever who believes that their worth and value is only shown by how much they achieve. Or maybe there's a people pleaser and a fixer who needs to fix everything. And this role, they may seem to be like separate, but they all have in common is that emotional cost. And when we start confusing those roles with who we truly are, we give up our needs, we self-sacrifice, and we pay price in our energy, in our sanity, in our well-being. Because when you're constantly editing yourself, when you're monitoring how you show up, how you perceive, when you're trying to meet expectations, over time, it just becomes unsustainable. It takes tremendous toll on your mental and emotional well-being. So the question is, how do we stop performing? How do we come back to our true selves, to who we truly are underneath those masks that we've been wearing for way too long? And the answer to this identity exhaustion is vulnerability. And that's not an easy thing to do, especially if you're the strong and capable one. And vulnerability is the ability to be honest with yourself about what you feel and what you need in this moment, instead of staying in this role that you're trying to maintain. And it doesn't mean that you've got to shout and tell everybody what you need, because it can be quite hard, but it's just being honest with yourself. It's about noticing what's coming up for you when you're trying to fix something, when you're trying to control, when you say yes, when you really want to say no, when you overextend yourself, when you people please. What is that emotion underneath there? Because by choosing to be imperfectly real rather than exhaustingly perfect, you drop that facade, that mask that takes all your energy to maintain, and you allow your humanity, your sanity, your health, your well-being to come before the performance. So how do we practice being vulnerable? Well, one simple way I can share with you, and that's what really helped me to go through my darkest times, was actually emotional labeling. It sounds very simple, but it's extremely effective. Because emotional labeling allows you to shift from that exhausting role that you feel you have to maintain into the real human emotion underneath it. When you name what you feel, you stop being fully absorbed by the pattern. You become aware of it. And whenever you're aware of something, it cannot control you anymore. So what it looks like in real life, somebody asks you for help and your first instinct is to go in there and rescue them. But this time you pause, you take a breath, you've got to regulate your nervous system first, remember? And then you connect to yourself and you go, I feel tired. I feel overwhelmed. I feel like I actually caring too much and I really need the help. I don't have a capacity. You get honest with yourself. Then instead of saying yes to them, you can just say, maybe next time, or give me a few hours, or not this time, right? So by connecting to the emotion that is underneath that role you maintain, you connect with the real you and you communicate it. And you can start with something small because it can feel pretty scary when you're so used to this identity running your life. And that's how you interrupt that identity exhaustion cycle. You stop acting on autopilot and connect with what you're actually feeling and what you need in this moment. So hopefully by now you can see that solution to burnout isn't just a break. It's addressing the patterns that are running underneath that. It's getting clear on your vision. What is it that you want so that your energy is not broadcasting everywhere? It's not being pulled into different direction. It's not being taken out by external demands. Instead, it becomes crystal focused, clear. It's regulating your nervous system, learning how to regulate yourself, how to get out of this fight and flight into rest and digest. And one way I shared with you through breath, pausing, taking inhale on 4, holding on 4, and exhaling for 4. And lastly, it's identity. It's all about being honest and vulnerable with yourself. What is it that you actually need? What do I feel in this moment? Instead of playing this exhausting role of being perfect, being always in control. And when you align your vision, your nervous system, and your identity, that's how you start building the true inner resilience, your inner strength, where no matter what happens to you, no matter what the challenge, what the pressure, what curve life throws at you, you start engaging with life in a way that does not break you. So thank you so much for listening, for being here with me. Hopefully that was helpful. And if you want to connect with me, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or YouTube, or just send me an email. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lena. This was so useful. I know there's a lot of resonance with half of the things that you mentioned. I mean, it's just the stress, the overwhelming feeling, everything, all of it. I mean, I know I was looking through the chat comments and everybody's like, yep, we got this. Exactly the same, exactly the same, exactly the same. So we totally understand. This is not something unique. I think a lot of us go through this. And I think it's all about mindset and it's all about what you just mentioned, emotional labeling, how we can maybe regulate ourselves to get us out of that kind of situation or condition. So we really appreciate you being here. I'm going to take just a second to see if there were any questions from any of our attendees before we wrap up. Give me just a second. I'm looking at both our YouTube stream as well as our chat box here. No, I think everybody's been acknowledging that this is something that we all go through quite a bit, different ways and means, I guess, but definitely something that we all should be more mindful of, should practice actively. But thank you so much, Lena. We appreciate you being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you so much. And hope you can stick around a little longer if it's not too late. But there's
Thank
other
you.
sessions that we will have going on right now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.